Hey guys, how are you? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing another movie review. This movie is a horror comedy from the UK, English language, released in the year 2015, directed by Steve Oram, and this film is called Aaaaaaah. So Aaaaaaah is set in an alternate sort of reality where humans are apes, and they don't communicate through language, it's basically just grunts. And so you've got this family who the father, the head figure, the alpha male of this family, was running things in his house, but now has been shifted to the outer because another younger male has come into it. So this guy's left living outside, he's very depressed, but then things are going to go even worse when two more males come into the house, and they're the more dominant than the male who kicked this guy out in the first place. So now there's going to be a new hierarchy, and it's going to result in chaos. And so there's a lot of jealousy and a lot of animalistic qualities that are going to come into the story, and what happens and what's in store for this family is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on this. The reason why I wanted to see this film is, number one, it was very unique in the way it looked. This is just through grunts, and I know it's very interesting in the way that the movie does depict, animalistic qualities even in human beings, and so it is trying something different. And I think storytelling in grunts is like storytelling in silent, silent films, in that you have to use your body language to convey your message. And I think there were some moments in this film that actually did that, but there were a lot of problems to this movie that I'll go into a little bit later. But the second reason I wanted to see this film was Steve Oram. Now, Steve Oram is known for his acting. This is actually his directing debut. And so he's acting, he was brilliant in Sightseers. Now, Ben Wheatley is one of my favourite directors, and he actually uses Steve Oram in his films. And so Steve Oram, I associate him with acting, but coming into directing, I was wondering what he could bring. And so the movie does have a very unique take on it. As I said, it's through grunts, it's very animalistic, it's giving you the impression that we're not so different from apes. We are basically a brilliant version of an ape, but what would the world be like if we actually went back to our animalistic qualities? And so the movie is very shocking, and it is very grotesque. There's a bit of gore in it as well, and it's a movie that does go out of its way to offend the viewer. So if you are easily offended, you're probably going to be offended at this, but if you are experienced to the more hardened sort of movie, you're probably not going to find this too offensive. And so you do have a movie that does break the boundaries, it does break the levels of what is decent, so it is a provocative film, and for that I liked it. But unfortunately this movie, it does take a massive risk, and I applaud Steve Oram for doing that, but the movie just doesn't have any legs. Now, it's a novelty film. This is a movie, it's supposed to be funny in the way they're grunting to each other, they're farting, or they're picking in the nose, or they're basically going to the toilet on the floor, and so that is funny after for say 10 minutes. But when it starts to go on and on, this is an 80-minute film, and it doesn't have the material for 80 minutes. It's because it goes for, after 10 minutes I started to feel, alright, I'm getting a little bit used to this, it's not the novelty it was at the start, and so now I want something a little bit different. And so it's a very thin story, and you don't know exactly what's going on, is because, as I said, the body language is good to some extent, but it's nowhere near the film The Tribe, which is a Ukrainian movie about sign language, and you didn't get any subtitles in that film, but that was done in a way where it was incredibly intriguing, and I was very surprised by this. But this movie tries to do it, but it's banking on the fact that it's shocking, it's banking on the fact that it wants to be very provocative and something unique. And so, as I said, that novelty value, when it wears off, this is where the film falls downhill rapidly. I thought this is an incredibly tedious film. A lot of people out there say it was never boring. Now, each to their own, but this is definitely a movie you're either going to love or hate, and unfortunately I am bordering on hating this film, because yes, it tries something, but unfortunately I didn't feel as though it had a strong plan. I felt as though it was banking on its plan A, but it didn't have a plan B to carry it once plan A ran out of steam. So the acting, nothing to the acting, all it was grunting, and so, as I said, there was no scripts, and so it was a very easy film to make. And for a film debut, I wanted Steve Oram to actually create something a little bit more, because it doesn't really demonstrate what he's going to be like as a director. Yes, he is not afraid to push the envelope as far as what is, basically what you see on screen, but it's not quite as funny as it wants to be, and it's not quite as shocking as it wants to be. As I said, if you are familiar with hardened sort of horror films in particular, you're not going to really find this overly, offensive, but if you're not exposed to this sort of stuff, if you're definitely into dramas and not the horror sort of scene, then I definitely think it's going to upset those viewers, and I think that's what it's intending to do. It's sticking its middle finger up at political correctness, but the movie just doesn't have any legs to really bank itself to make it a rewarding experience. I thought the end of the film, it was pretty shocking, but by then I checked out, and I was looking at my watch waiting for this to finish, because unfortunately it just doesn't have the heart to really keep beating, and unfortunately the movie dies quite well before the end of the film. So that was a great shame. Not definitely not a great debut for Steve Oram. You know, he's a brilliant actor, but unfortunately this doesn't demonstrate anything as far as directing is concerned, so hopefully in the future he might actually try something with a little bit more of a traditional storyline to actually tell the viewer whether or not he has what it takes behind the camera. So you've also got some pretty awful camera work. It's very shaky, and a lot of it zoomed in and, you know, it zooms out, so it's very inconsistent on the production level as well. So that doesn't really help it, and in the end what it is a movie that I wouldn't recommend, and you really could pass up the opportunity of seeing it. So overall for I'm only going to give this one star. I was disappointed. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.